My name is Emmy. I'm 68 years old. Days ago, my own son set our house on fire. As the flames consumed us, my husband whispered, "Don't move, Emmy. Play dead." Unfortunately, we raised a son who betrayed us. Subscribe to the channel and don't miss this story. The whole truth is hidden behind a loving family, unmasking our own son, and you won't believe what happened next. The searing heat was the first thing that truly registered. A predatory beast licking at my skin, even before the agonizing pain in my leg. Smoke, thick and acrid, clawed at my throat, each breath a struggle, each cough a spasm that sent fresh jolts of agony through my already battered body. My eyes, though tearing, could make out the orange glow of flames dancing wildly, consuming the very walls of the cabin Elias and I had built with our own hands, brick by precious brick, memory by cherished memory. This wasn't just a fire. It was the immolation of our entire world. A heavy beam had collapsed, pinning my left leg beneath it, crushing bone and muscle with ruthless efficiency. The excruciating pressure was a constant, blinding white noise, but even through that haze, a desperate, raspy whisper cut through the roar of the inferno. "Don't move, Emmy. Play dead." It was Elias, my husband, his voice strained with unimaginable effort, lying somewhere beside me amidst the debris. His words, stark and chilling, sliced through the fog of pain and disbelief, snapping something crucial into place in my shattered mind. Play dead. My son, Leo. Only moments before, we had been sitting on the porch, watching the stars bloom in the mountain sky. Elias was sketching, his pencil flying across the paper with that familiar focused intensity, while I knitted a scarf for Leo, a rich, earthy green that perfectly matched his artistic temperament. Leo, meanwhile, had excused himself, claiming he needed to finish a late-night painting for an upcoming exhibition. We'd heard his car pull away a short while later, a familiar comfort. He was off to his studio in town, we thought. And then, the explosion. Not a sound, but a concussive blast that ripped through the night, shaking the cabin to its foundations, followed by the rapid, hungry crackle of flames. The last thing I remembered before the roof caved in was Leo's face. Not the face of the artist I adored, not the kind eyes I'd seen light up with passion for his work, but a fleeting image, framed by the kitchen window as Elias and I rushed to investigate the strange smell. A face contorted in a chilling smirk, illuminated by a flickering lighter. And then, the inferno. He hadn't driven away. He had set the fire. The realization was a colder, sharper agony than any physical wound. My son, Leo, the boy we had raised with every ounce of our love and devotion, the artist whose talent we had nurtured with pride, had tried to murder us. The heat from the burning timbers felt less like a threat and more like a symbol of the betrayal scorching my soul. I forced myself to stillness. The beam on my leg pulsed with an unbearable weight, but I clamped my jaw shut, stifling any scream that threatened to escape. I controlled my breathing, making it shallow, erratic, mimicking the last gasps of life. The smoke continued to choke, but I fought the urge to cough, to reveal any sign of consciousness. Fear, a primal, icy grip, squeezed my heart, but it was quickly overshadowed by a burning, bewildered rage. Why? Through half-closed eyes, I could see fragments of our life burning around me. The antique armchair where I read to Leo as a boy, now smoldering. Elias's drafting table, a twisted wreck of metal and ash. The intricate wooden carvings Leo had made for us when he was just 10, turning black. Every cinder was a piece of our shared history, deliberately annihilated. I heard muffled sounds nearby. Was Elias still alive? Was he playing dead too? A faint groan, then silence. I prayed with every fiber of my being that he was conscious, that his sharp mind was working, that his engineering brilliance was finding a way out of this hell. But I couldn't risk a sound. The danger wasn't just the fire anymore. It was the unseen presence, Leo, who might be lurking, ensuring his monstrous act was complete. The smell of burning wood, singed fabric, and something else, something metallic, chemical, filled my nostrils. It was the scent of destruction, of malice. How could I have been so blind? How could the child I carried, nurtured, and celebrated turn into a perpetrator of such unthinkable violence? The warmth of motherly love, which had enveloped Leo for decades, now felt like a cruel illusion, a tool he had used to hide his true intentions. My muscles ached, screaming for release from the unnatural stillness. The pain was a relentless hammer, but Elias's whisper was a mantra, a lifeline. Play dead. I focused on it, on the desperate hope it offered. If we were believed to be dead, perhaps we could survive. Perhaps we could understand. Perhaps we could expose the monster. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The roaring fire became a duller, hungrier crackle. The heat, though still intense, seemed to recede slightly as parts of the structure collapsed inward. I heard no footsteps, no sounds of anyone approaching to inspect the wreckage. Had Leo left, or was he watching, a silent predator observing his prey? The uncertainty was almost as terrifying as the fire itself. My body was broken, but my mind, sharpened by betrayal, began to churn, searching for answers in the ashes of our lives. Elias's life, my life, and the life of the son we thought we knew. Our life, before the fire, before the whisper, before the horrific realization, was a meticulously crafted symphony of success, creativity, and familial devotion. Elias and I had met in college, two young idealists brimming with dreams. He, with his architectural blueprints, envisioning structures that married beauty with function. I, with my love for literature, desiring to build worlds with words, eventually finding my calling as a respected editor for a prominent publishing house. We built our lives with intention, a shared vision of harmony and purpose. Our cabin, now reduced to cinders, was a testament to our enduring love and shared ambition. Perched amidst the ancient pines, overlooking a serene lake, it wasn't just a house, it was our sanctuary, designed by Elias himself. Every beam, every window, every stone hearth told a story of our journey together. Here, we hosted literary salons and architectural symposiums filled with lively debate and intellectual camaraderie. Here, we found peace, inspiration, and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. And then there was Leo, our only child, the unexpected blessing that completed our world. From the moment he was born, he was a source of immense pride and boundless affection. As a child, he was precocious, his mind alight with curiosity. He would sit for hours, sketching intricate designs while Elias worked, or losing himself in the fantastical tales from the books I edited. His earliest drawings, though childish, showed an undeniable spark, a natural talent that both Elias and I, in our respective fields, recognized immediately. We nurtured that talent with unwavering dedication. We bought him every art supply imaginable, enrolled him in the finest art schools, and encouraged every brushstroke, every sculpted form. Elias, despite his demanding career, would spend weekends with Leo in his home studio, teaching him perspective and composition, sharing the discipline of creation. I, in turn, immersed him in the narratives of the great artists, explaining how art could express the deepest human truths. We believed we were raising a prodigy, a sensitive soul destined for greatness. Leo blossomed into a handsome, charismatic young man. His paintings, often abstract landscapes filled with raw emotion and vibrant colors, garnered critical acclaim. He was featured in galleries, won awards, and was frequently praised in local art magazines. He had a way of charming everyone he met, a dazzling smile, thoughtful questions, and an innate ability to make people feel heard. We were bursting with pride. "He's just like you, Emmy," Elias would often say, "so deeply attuned to beauty." And Leo, with a humble nod, would always credit us for his success, thanking us for the sacrifices and encouragement. Our family traditions revolved around celebrating his achievements. Birthday dinners at his favorite Italian restaurant, Christmas gatherings filled with his laughter, summer vacations where he would set up his easel by the lake, capturing the light. He brought a vibrancy, a youthful energy that kept our later years feeling eternally spring-like. He married a lovely woman named Sophia a few years ago, a gentle, quiet soul who adored him and often spoke of his genius. They had no children, a quiet sadness for us, but our love for Leo extended seamlessly to Sophia. We believed our family was expanding, solidifying, becoming an even stronger, more beautiful tapestry. Never once in all those years did we question his love or his loyalty. He was our flesh and blood, our legacy. He was the reason we worked so hard, the future we envisioned. He lived modestly for an artist, but we attributed that to his dedication to his craft, his indifference to material possessions. We'd always ensured he was comfortable, offering financial support when his exhibitions were slow, purchasing his art, and even setting up a trust fund for his future. What parents wouldn't do that for their gifted, beloved son? But now, lying in the ashes, the scent of burning ambition and deceit replacing the scent of paint and linseed oil, I realized how perfectly crafted Leo's façade had been. The quiet dedication, the humble gratitude, the adoring son, it was all a performance, a masterful deception. The subtle glances, the occasional dismissive tone he'd sometimes use when speaking of his own childhood creations, a fleeting coldness in his eyes when he thought no one was looking, which I had always dismissed as an artist's temperament or youthful angst. Elias, perhaps, had seen more. Perhaps he had been connecting dots I refused to acknowledge, small inconsistencies that I, in my blind motherly love, chose to ignore. The pain in my leg screamed, bringing me back to the present, to the horrifying reality. The contrast between the life we thought we had and the nightmare we were living was unbearable. The perfect masterpiece, revealed as a cruel, destructive forgery. The profound shock was that the destroyer was not a stranger, but the very hand we had lovingly guided. What could possibly drive a son to attempt such a monstrous act against the parents who had given him everything? The answer, I knew, lay buried somewhere, perhaps in the smoke and ruins around me, waiting to be unearthed. And Elias, my silent broken partner, might hold the key. The years after Leo's initial successes felt like a prolonged, subtle shift in the tectonic plates of our family, imperceptible to my loving gaze, but steadily building pressure beneath the surface. His charming demeanor never wavered in public, nor in our direct interactions, but the small, unsettling cracks began to appear in the perfect façade I had so carefully constructed for him in my mind. He started spending less time at our cabin, preferring his studio apartment in the city, citing the need for inspiration and proximity to the art scene. We accepted this readily, proud of his ambition. Yet, his visits became shorter, more rushed. He would arrive with gifts, often expensive, seemingly thoughtful presents for Elias and me. But the warmth behind his eyes seemed to dim, replaced by a glint I couldn't quite decipher. I brushed it off as the natural distance that grows as children become independent, but a nagging feeling persisted, like a faint off-key note in our otherwise harmonious family melody. Sophia, his wife, also seemed to change. Once a quiet, gentle presence, she became almost ethereal, fading into the background during family dinners, her usually expressive eyes now downcast or darting nervously. When I tried to engage her in conversation, she would offer polite but brief answers, often glancing at Leo before speaking, as if seeking his unspoken permission. I attributed it to shyness, perhaps even a quiet awe of Leo's burgeoning fame. Now I realize it was fear. She was already living under the shadow of his control, a victim long before we were. The financial requests began subtly, almost imperceptibly. First, a loan for new art supplies, a special type of paint from Italy. Then, a down payment for a larger studio space in a more prestigious part of town. Later, a sum for a major art deal that needed immediate capital. Each request was accompanied by a plausible explanation, a convincing story of opportunity and necessity delivered with his charming smile. Elias, always generous and proud of his son's talent, never hesitated. I, too, saw it as an investment in Leo's future, a testament to our belief in him. Our combined wealth from Elias's architecture firm and my publishing career was substantial, so these sums, though not insignificant, didn't seem to impact us directly. We trusted him implicitly. We never asked for receipts, never pressed for details. Why would we? He was our son. But Elias, even then, was perhaps a shade less naive than I. In the agonizing silence of the burning cabin, his voice hoarse with pain, he began to piece together the events that had led us to this incinerated present. "Emmy," he whispered, his words punctuated by painful gasps. The financial situation. It wasn't what it seemed. He confessed to a growing unease in the past year. He'd noticed larger sums disappearing from accounts we jointly managed, small amounts at first, then larger withdrawals that didn't align with Leo's supposed expenses. He'd tried to subtly question Leo, to understand the necessity, but Leo would always deflect, growing cold, almost agitated when pressed. He'd blame the fluctuating art market, the exorbitant costs of materials, or the unpredictable nature of commissions. Elias, ever the logical engineer, tried to rationalize it, but the numbers never quite added up. The final, most chilling precursor to the fire came a few months ago when Elias suggested we revise our will. We were in our late 60s, and it felt like a sensible, responsible step. Our estate, valued in the millions, was primarily intended for Leo, with a smaller portion allocated to Sophia and various charities. When we mentioned this to Leo, his reaction was oddly intense. He was overly enthusiastic, almost manic. "Oh, that's a fantastic idea, Dad, Mom. We should get that done right away. You know, just to make sure everything's in order." He insisted on accompanying us to our lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a kind, elderly man who had handled our affairs for decades. During the meeting, Leo was strangely assertive, almost dominating the conversation. He suggested that, given his business acumen, he should be the sole executor of the estate and have full power of attorney over our assets should anything happen to us. "It's just practical, Mom," he'd reasoned, flashing his dazzling smile. "Think of all the legal hassle it would save. I can manage everything efficiently, ensure your wishes are followed, and take care of your needs as you get older." Elias, ever trusting, had nodded, swayed by the apparent logic and his son's persuasive charm. I, however, felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. The gentle art dealer had transformed into a shrewd businessman, and the shift was jarring. I remembered expressing my discomfort to Elias later that evening. "Don't you think Leo's a bit too eager for control?" I'd asked, trying to keep my voice light. Elias, looking thoughtful, had merely said, "He's just being proactive, Emmy. He loves us. He wants to ensure our security." But even then, I detected a faint shadow of doubt in his own eyes, a flicker of the same unease I felt. He chose not to voice it, to protect the fragile peace, to avoid confronting the son he loved so fiercely. We signed the papers, unknowingly handing Leo the keys to our entire lives, and, as it turned out, the map to our potential demise. A few weeks after the will was finalized, Leo started to press us to sell the cabin. "It's too remote, Mom and Dad," he argued, his voice tinged with a new, authoritative edge. "What if something happens? It would take hours for help to reach you. You should move closer to town, perhaps into a nice condo." Our cabin, our sanctuary, the heart of our perfect life, was suddenly deemed a liability. He spoke with such conviction, painting a picture of concern for our well-being, but his gaze, when he thought I wasn't looking, was cold, analytical, assessing the value of the land, the property. I resisted, clinging to our home, to the memories embedded in its very walls, but his insistence grew, a relentless, subtle pressure that felt less like love and more like an impending threat. Elias, still trusting, began to consider it, swayed by Leo's practical arguments. Little did we know, the stage was already being set for the final act of betrayal, and the cabin, rather than being sold, would become our funeral pyre. The searing heat had diminished, replaced by a lingering, oppressive warmth and the choking scent of embers. The structural groans of the cabin had subsided, leaving a horrifying stillness, broken only by Elias's ragged breaths and my own ragged heartbeat. The pain in my leg was a dull, persistent roar, but my mind, fueled by Elias's earlier whispers, was now sharply focused. The truth, long buried beneath layers of denial and blind love, was clawing its way to the surface. "Emmy," Elias gasped, his voice barely audible, raw from smoke and exertion. "It wasn't just the money, not just the will. Leo, he needed us gone. Urgently." My shattered heart constricted. "Needed us gone? Elias, what are you saying?" He coughed, a dry, rattling sound that tore through my chest. I started investigating, discreetly. The last few months, the withdrawals grew more frequent, more desperate. I looked into his studio, his finances. He paused, gathering strength. His successful art career was a sham, Emmy, a meticulously crafted illusion. The words hit me like another falling beam, each syllable a splinter in my soul. A sham? But his exhibitions? The reviews? The awards? My voice was a broken whisper, laced with disbelief. Paid for, Elias rasped, or manipulated. The awards were minor, inflated by his own funding. The deals were mostly fabrications to get money from us. He never truly built a solid career. He lived off our generosity, off the money he siphoned from our accounts. The coldness I had sometimes glimpsed in Leo's eyes, the fleeting dismissiveness I'd rationalized as an artist's temperament, now coalesced into something far more sinister. It wasn't arrogance, it was contempt. Contempt for our blind faith, for our unwavering support. He hadn't been an artist. He had been a master manipulator, orchestrating our emotions, our pride, to serve his own greed. But why the urgency now? I pressed, the question a desperate plea for clarity in the smoke-filled ruins. He was deeply in debt, Emmy, catastrophically so, Elias explained, each word an effort. Not just bank loans, but he'd borrowed from illicit sources, from people who don't take no for an answer, people who don't care about artistic temperament or family tragedies. They wanted their money, and they wanted it now. A chill, colder than any winter wind, swept through my injured body. This wasn't just about greed, it was about survival for him. We were not just an inconvenience. We were his only remaining asset, a final solution to a looming financial catastrophe. If we died in an accident, our estate, now fully under his power of attorney, would immediately become his. He could pay off his debts and disappear, leaving behind a perfectly orchestrated tragedy. Sophia, did she know? I asked, a fresh wave of nausea washing over me. The gentle Sophia, the quiet soul who adored him. Was she also a part of this monstrous deception? Elias sighed, a sound heavy with sorrow. I believe so. She was always the one who urged him on when he asked for money, always so eager to support his visions. In the last few months, she became increasingly agitated, constantly asking about the progress of our will, about the value of the cabin, the liquidity of our assets. They were not innocent questions, Emmy. They were the questions of a co-conspirator, calculating their prize. The image of Sophia, demure and supportive, shattered into 1,000 shards. Her quietness wasn't shyness, it was complicity. Her adoration, a feigned loyalty to a shared, destructive goal. We need to get out of here, Elias, I whispered, the urgency in my voice overriding the pain. Before he comes back to check. He won't, Elias said, his voice stronger now, tinged with a grim determination. I saw him leave. He was driving fast. He left us here to die. A tear finally escaped my eye, tracing a path through the grime and soot on my cheek. He was not just a murderer. He was a coward, abandoning his parents to burn in the trap he had set. But what do we do, Elias? How do we prove it? We're trapped, injured. My phone, Elias interrupted, his voice strained but firm. It was in my inner jacket pocket, fireproof case. I activated the recorder when I saw his face at the window with the lighter. It should have captured everything. A flicker of hope, fragile but potent, ignited in my chest. Proof. The very thing we needed to unravel his meticulously woven web of lies. But as Elias tried to reach for his jacket, a low rumble started, growing louder, more ominous. The ground beneath us trembled. It was not the cabin collapsing further. It was something else, a large, heavy vehicle approaching, slowly, deliberately. Panic flared. Had Leo returned? Had he decided to ensure our demise personally? Or were his friends, the dangerous creditors, coming to collect on his behalf, perhaps checking on his inheritance? Stay absolutely still, Emmy, Elias warned, his voice a low growl of pure instinct. Don't make a sound. We don't know who it is. The rumble grew into a throaty growl, then the crunch of heavy tires on the gravel path leading to our cabin. A large, dark silhouette appeared through the smoke and haze at the edge of the property, slowly moving towards the burning structure. It was a utility truck, emblazoned with the logo of the local forestry service. They had seen the smoke, the flames. Help was on the way. But with help came immense risk. If Leo or Sophia were with them, or if they were still lurking nearby, our performance of being dead had to be flawless. We couldn't reveal ourselves, not yet, not until we were absolutely certain we were safe and our evidence secure. The fire might have nearly claimed our lives, but it had also offered a grim opportunity for survival, a chance to expose the monster we had unknowingly nurtured. We had to seize it. The rumble of the approaching Forestry Service truck grew louder, a jarring intrusion into the silent horror of our predicament. It was a lifeline, but one fraught with immediate danger. Elias and I lay perfectly still amidst the smoldering ruins, our bodies aching, our lungs burning, our minds racing. We had to maintain the illusion of death, not just for the forestry workers, but in case Leo or Sophia were shadowing them, ensuring their murderous plan had succeeded. The heavy vehicle eventually came to a halt on the charred remnants of our driveway. I could hear men shouting, their voices muffled by the still thick smoke. "Fire! Major structure fire!" someone yelled. "Looks like the cabin is a total loss." Another voice, deeper, more authoritative, gave instructions, coordinating efforts to contain the blaze and search for survivors. 2 adults registered at this address, Elias and Emmy Smith. Check for vehicles, then start a perimeter search for survivors. Anyone inside? My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. Anyone inside? Yes, 2 people were inside, barely clinging to life, playing the most crucial roles of their lives. I could hear the crunch of heavy boots on debris, the spray of water as they began to douse the most aggressive flames. The heat, though less intense than before, still emanated from the smoldering timbers, a constant reminder of the hell we had just endured. Footsteps approached, slowly, cautiously, through the wreckage. "Over here!" a voice suddenly exclaimed, much closer than I expected. I think I see someone." A beam of light, likely from a powerful flashlight, cut through the smoke, sweeping over my face. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing imperceptible, my body limp. I could feel the intense heat of the surrounding embers, but I focused on the cold dread in my stomach, the need to maintain the deception. A man knelt beside me. I felt gentle hands probe my neck, searching for a pulse. "Weak pulse here," he announced, his voice urgent. "She's barely clinging on." He moved to my head, gently touching my hair, pulling back the soot-stained strands. Looks like heavy smoke inhalation, possible head trauma, and, oh dear Lord, crushed leg. He then moved away, and I heard him speak to someone else. "Got a female here, critical condition, pulse faint, and, wait, there's another one." I heard more movement, more shouting. A few agonizing moments later, the same hands were on Elias. "Male here, also critical. Severe burns, smoke inhalation. Let's get an EMT team in here stat." Relief, pure and unadulterated, washed over me. They believed we were critically injured, but alive. This was better than outright death. It meant a chance. They wouldn't discard us. They would take us to a hospital where we might find an opportunity to speak, to reveal the truth, away from Leo's watchful, murderous eyes. Elias had planned this, his ingenious mind even in his pain, anticipating that we might be found alive, but barely. We would be victims, not witnesses, until we chose otherwise. The sounds of the rescue intensified. More voices, the whir of medical equipment, the distant wail of sirens. I felt hands, gentle but firm, carefully extricating me from beneath the beam that had pinned my leg. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through my body, and I clenched my jaw, a silent scream tearing through my throat. I had to remain unresponsive. I had to. They strapped me to a stretcher, the straps pressing against my broken ribs, each breath a shallow torment. I felt myself being lifted, carried through the smoky air. The world tilted, spun, then stabilized. I could feel the cold night air on my face, a blessed relief from the heat, but the smoke still clung to my nostrils, burning. As I was being loaded into an ambulance, I heard snippets of conversation. "Looks like a gas leak explosion, possibly faulty wiring," a firefighter speculated. "Total devastation. They're lucky to be alive." Lucky. The bitter irony almost made me laugh, a sound that would betray everything. We weren't lucky. We were victims of a deliberate act, and our luck was merely a desperate performance for survival. Another voice, a woman's, was speaking softly near the ambulance. "Oh my God, Elias and Emmy! This is just unthinkable." It was Mrs. Gable, our neighbor from a few miles down the road. Her genuine concern, her sorrow, was a stark contrast to the calculated cruelty of our son. Her presence, however, raised another chilling question. Had Leo returned to the scene? Was he watching the ambulance carry his dying parents away? I scanned the faces blurred by pain and smoke, but saw no sign of him, nor Sophia. The ambulance doors closed, plunging me into a dimly lit, confined space filled with the sterile smell of antiseptics and the hum of medical machinery. A paramedic spoke to me in a calm, soothing voice, checking my vitals, placing an oxygen mask over my face. "Just hang in there, ma'am. We're taking you to the nearest trauma center. You're going to be okay." I wanted to scream, to tell her what had truly happened, but Elias's words echoed, "Play dead. Not yet. Not until we were truly safe." I focused on the rhythm of the ambulance, the bumps and turns on the road. Each jostle sent fresh pain through my body, but it was also a tangible sign of movement, of progress away from the burning wreckage, away from the immediate threat. I could only hope Elias was in a similar state, being cared for, still fighting, still playing his part. The thought of him, my rock, lying injured, kept a flicker of strength alive within me. We had survived the fire, but the true battle, the fight for justice and truth, was just beginning, and it would start with our voices when we were ready to speak. The journey to the hospital was a blurry kaleidoscope of pain and fleeting consciousness. The ambulance siren wailed a mournful tune, cutting through the night, a stark contrast to the quiet, peaceful nights we once enjoyed at the cabin. Inside, the paramedics worked with quiet efficiency, their murmurs a comforting balm against the gnawing fear. They spoke in medical jargon I couldn't understand, but their gentle hands and concerned faces conveyed a message of care. I was alive, and for now, safe. Upon arrival, the emergency room erupted in a controlled chaos of flashing lights, frantic voices, and the hurried rolling of gurneys. I was whisked away, a mere object of urgent medical attention. Doctors and nurses swarmed around me, their faces a blur, their instructions sharp and precise. I felt needles, cold compresses, the gentle but firm touch of medical instruments. All the while, I maintained my charade, my eyes closed, my breathing shallow, my body limp, responding only to the most rudimentary stimuli. The adrenaline that had fueled my initial survival was wearing off, leaving behind a crushing fatigue and an overwhelming sense of vulnerability. My leg was agonizing, a throbbing symphony of broken bones. My head throbbed, a dull ache that resonated with every beat of my heart. My throat was raw from the smoke, my lungs protesting with every shallow breath. But even through the pain, my mind was alert, seeking an opportunity, a moment to reveal the truth without compromising our safety. I heard voices around my bed. "Severe smoke inhalation, first-degree burns on her arms," a doctor dictated. "Fractured tibia, possibly a concussion. Her vitals are surprisingly stable for her condition." The last part made my heart flutter. Was I being too good at playing dead? Was my body inadvertently betraying my act? I worried they might suspect I was faking the extent of my unconsciousness. "Her husband, Elias Smith, is in Trauma Room 3, a nurse informed the doctor. "Also critical, more extensive burns. They were both found unconscious in the cabin wreckage." Unconscious. Good. They believed we were victims, severely injured, unable to communicate. This was precisely the position Elias had gambled on. Hours blurred into an eternity of tests, scans, and subtle prodding. Then I felt a new presence by my bedside. A soft touch on my arm, a gentle voice. "Mrs. Smith? Emmy? Can you hear me?" It was a female voice, younger, filled with a genuine concern that pierced through my emotional armor. I kept my eyes closed, feigning deep unconsciousness. Then I heard another set of footsteps approaching. More voices, hushed and somber. "Any news on Emmy and Elias, Nurse Amelia?" a familiar voice whispered. My blood ran cold. It was Sophia, and with her, Leo. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape. They were here, checking on their poor, injured parents. I could feel their presence, the cold aura of their deception. I focused on controlling my breathing, on keeping my facial muscles completely relaxed. This was the moment of gravest danger. Any sign of awareness, any subtle flicker, and everything could be lost. Sophia's voice, now laced with a theatrical tremor, was almost unbearable. "Oh, Mama Emmy, my poor, sweet Emmy. I can't believe it. What a tragedy." She sniffled, a sound that, under normal circumstances, would have torn at my heart. Now it was a grotesque mockery. I could almost feel her performative tears, a well-rehearsed act for the benefit of the hospital staff. Then Leo spoke, his voice surprisingly steady, almost detached. "Yes, Nurse Amelia. Any hope for them? Father is also in critical condition, I hear." He sounded like a concerned son, perfectly playing the role he had scripted. His voice sent shivers down my spine. The same voice that had uttered the charming excuses, the same voice that, in his rage, had set our home ablaze. I felt a hand gently squeeze my arm. It was Sophia's. Her touch, once comforting, now felt like a viper's coil. "We're just so devastated," she murmured, her voice close to my ear. "After all the plans we had, the exciting future, and now this." Then Leo leaned in, his breath warm against my ear, and whispered something that froze my blood. His voice was low, devoid of emotion, a chilling contrast to his earlier public grief. "You should have just agreed to sell the cabin, Mom, and never questioned the trust. Some things are better left untouched." The words were a veiled threat, a confirmation of their malicious intent. "And then," he added, almost as an afterthought, with a cruel, knowing undertone, "just like our little secret, right?" He wasn't referring to the financial manipulations. He was referring to the fire. He was daring me, confirming his guilt, believing I was too far gone to ever reveal it. As Leo straightened up, I heard Nurse Amelia gasp softly. Her rapid intake of breath was almost imperceptible, but it registered clearly in my hyper-aware state. She had heard him. She had heard the veiled threat, the chilling implication. Her presence, a witness to his subtle confession, was the unexpected gift we needed. I needed to communicate with her. I needed to let her know I understood, that I was aware, that I was not truly unconscious. With an agonizing effort, I very, very subtly flexed my index finger. The smallest, most imperceptible movement, but it was all I could manage. Nurse Amelia's head snapped towards the monitors, ostensibly checking my vitals, but her eyes, as I risked a minuscule peek, were wide with a mix of shock and dawning horror. She had seen my finger move. She had heard Leo's words. She was putting it together. This was our chance. This was our silent SOS. We had survived the fire, and now, with a single fragile movement, we had found an ally. After Leo and Sophia left, Nurse Amelia returned to my bedside, her face a mask of professional calm, but her eyes betrayed a profound disquiet. She adjusted my IV, ostensibly checking my readings, then leaned in close, her voice a hushed whisper. "Mrs. Smith," she murmured, her breath soft against my ear. "I know you can hear me. What I just overheard? That wasn't normal. If you are in danger, you need to warn me somehow." My heart, though injured, surged with a desperate hope. She had understood. She was an ally. With every ounce of willpower I possessed, I repeated the tiny, almost imperceptible movement of my index finger. Once. Amelia's eyes flickered to my hand, then back to my face, a silent understanding passing between us. "Oh my God," she breathed, so low I barely caught it. "She's faking unconsciousness." I moved my finger again, this time twice, a confirmation. "Yes. Listen," she continued, her voice gaining an urgent edge. "I'm going to pretend to check your monitors. If you are in danger from those people who just left, move your finger 3 times. Without hesitation, I mustered the strength, moving my finger 3 distinct times. Amelia gasped, a sharp, choked sound. "They did this to you." Another 3 movements. She straightened up, her back to me, fiddling with a machine, clearly processing the horrifying implications. Her posture communicated a struggle, an internal debate about the terrifying secret she had just uncovered. Finally, she turned back, her face set with grim determination. "I'll talk to the lead doctor," she whispered, her voice firm. But you need to keep up the act until we can ensure your safety. Understand? I moved my finger once. The minutes that followed were agonizing, each second a test of my resolve. Amelia left, and I was alone again, praying she would be believed, praying for help to arrive before Leo and Sophia realized their mistake. Soon, I heard footsteps approaching. This time, there was a different energy. It was Amelia, but with her were a more senior doctor and, crucially, 2 police officers. "Mrs. Smith," the lead doctor said, his voice quiet but commanding, "Nurse Amelia has informed us of your situation. If you can hear me, we need you to know you are safe now. The officers are here to protect you." A wave of profound relief washed over me, almost breaking my carefully maintained composure. "Can you open your eyes?" one of the officers asked. Slowly, painstakingly, I opened my eyes. The hospital lights were blinding, but gradually the worried faces of my saviors came into focus. "Thank God," Amelia murmured, a tear escaping her eye. "I thought I was going crazy." "Mrs. Smith," the officer, a middle-aged man with a serious but kind expression, said, "I'm Detective Miller. We understand you may be in a very dangerous situation. Can you tell us what truly happened at your cabin?" My voice was a raw, scratchy whisper, strained from the smoke and hours of silence. "My son, Leo, and his wife, Sophia, they set the fire. They tried to kill us." The floodgates of truth opened. Over the next few hours, in a blur of pain and overwhelming relief, I recounted everything. The subtle shifts in Leo's behavior, the increasing financial demands, the unsettling insistence on control over our will, and finally, the horrific attempt on our lives. But the most crucial evidence was Elias's phone. "Your husband recorded proof?" Detective Miller asked, his eyes widening with genuine surprise. "Yes," I rasped, my voice still weak. "It's all on his phone. He activated the recorder when he saw Leo with the lighter just before the explosion." The detective immediately went to Elias's room. My husband, though still weak and gravely injured, was conscious. When Miller explained, Elias didn't hesitate, handing over his fire-resistant phone. "Here it is," he said, his voice raspy but firm. "Years of lies, and the truth of tonight." While police technicians began analyzing the recording, Leo and Sophia remained in the waiting room, performing their roles as devastated family members. They offered interviews, expressed their profound grief, and spoke of the tragic accident. They had no idea their meticulously constructed world of lies was crumbling. An hour later, Detective Miller returned, his expression grim but resolute. "The recording is clear, Mrs. Smith," he stated. "We have explicit confessions from Leo and Sophia about planning this fire, about their financial motives, and even a veiled reference to previous manipulations. It's more than enough for premeditated attempted murder charges." "But you'll arrest them here?" I asked, a fresh wave of anxiety washing over me. "If they realize we're alive..." Miller nodded, understanding my fear. "We already have officers in position. As soon as the warrants are signed, they'll be taken into custody. In the meantime, you and Mr. Smith are under full police protection." The irony was stark. They were still receiving condolences for our deaths, planning our funeral, and how to access our estate. They were oblivious that in the rooms above them, their carefully orchestrated downfall was imminent. "There's something else," Miller added, pulling out a folder. "After hearing your story, we quietly investigated your son's finances. He's not only bankrupt, as you suspected, but he forged your signatures on several documents, attempting to access various bank accounts. Had you died tonight, he would have had immediate access to everything. This confirmation twisted the knife further. Not just murder, but systematic theft and deceit." "What about Sophia?" I asked, still reeling. "She was fully aware and complicit," Miller confirmed. "We have recordings where she urges him to act fast before they go to the police. This wasn't a spontaneous act of desperation, Mrs. Smith. It was a cold, calculated plan." "What will happen to them?" I asked, knowing the answer, but needing to hear it. "They'll be arrested shortly," Miller confirmed, his voice firm. "And with this evidence, they'll face significant prison time. My son, the artist, and his devoted wife, the gentle soul, were about to face the consequences of their monstrous betrayal. The truth, finally, was coming to light. The moment Detective Miller informed us that the warrants were signed, a profound sense of closure, tinged with a deep, aching sadness, settled over me. The police moved with quiet precision. From my hospital room window, I could see officers subtly positioning themselves around the main entrance and the parking lot. The waiting game was over. The charade was about to end. Suddenly, a voice, amplified by a loudspeaker, cut through the quiet hum of the hospital. "Leo Smith and Sophia Smith," the firm voice of an officer echoed. "You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Elias and Emmy Smith, and for multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy." A stunned silence followed, thick and heavy. Then, Sophia's voice, shrill and hysterical, pierced the air. "What are you talking about? This is insane! Our parents, they just died in a tragic accident. We are the victims here." "Ma'am," the officer responded calmly, his voice unwavering, "your parents are alive and have provided irrefutable evidence of your crimes." There was a moment of absolute horrified silence, followed by a guttural scream of pure despair from Leo. "That's impossible. We saw them die. They were dead." His involuntary confession, captured by the police's own recorders, was a final, damning piece of evidence. The carefully constructed illusion had shattered. Then, the true horror of their relationship unfolded publicly. Over the police radio, I could hear Sophia's voice, now turning venomous, blaming Leo. "It was all his idea. I didn't want to do any of this. He forced me." And Leo, in a fit of desperate rage, screamed back, "You were the one who pushed to get the will changed. You bought the accelerants. You planned all of this with me." In a matter of minutes, the alliance built on greed and deceit crumbled, each trying desperately to save their own skin, exposing the other's depravity. It was a grotesque, pathetic spectacle of self-preservation, stripping away any last shred of their humanity. Detective Miller returned to my room an hour later, his expression a mix of weary satisfaction and genuine sorrow. "They're in custody, Mrs. Smith," he confirmed, "on their way to the precinct. They're both trying to incriminate each other, which only strengthens our case. It's a messy business, but justice will be served." But he had one more piece of information, a final chilling revelation. "During their arrest, we found this," he said, pulling out a small, sleek digital recorder from a plastic evidence bag. "It was in Leo's backpack. Apparently, he'd been recording his conversations with you and Mr. Smith for the past few weeks, probably looking for evidence that you suspected something." My blood ran cold. The depth of their premeditation, the calculated monitoring of our lives, was breathtaking. We weren't just targets. We were subjects in their twisted, murderous experiment. "What does that mean?" I whispered, my throat tight. Miller sighed, running a hand over his face. "It means he knew you were starting to catch on. The fire. It wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was a direct response to your growing suspicions. We found a recording where Sophia clearly tells him we have to act fast before they go to the police. They weren't reacting to a sudden crisis. They were executing a pre-planned phase of their overall scheme. You were merely pawns in their desperate game. The sheer coldness of their calculation, the utter lack of remorse or human connection, was almost incomprehensible. They hadn't just planned to kill us. They had been watching, listening, analyzing our every move, gauging the precise moment to strike. We were rats in a maze, and they, the detached scientists observing our demise. "And there's more," Detective Miller continued, pulling out another document. "In investigating their finances, we discovered Leo not only owed money to dangerous creditors, but he also systematically forged your signatures on countless financial documents, attempting to drain your accounts long before the fire. If you had died tonight, he would have had immediate, unfettered access to all your remaining assets." Every new revelation was a fresh wound, twisting the knife of betrayal deeper. My own son, not only plotting my death, but actively stealing from me, forging my name, violating every principle of trust and family I had tried to instill in him. "How much money did he steal in total?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I truly wanted to know. "Approximately $750,000 over the last 7 years, Miller replied. "Small amounts at first, then larger sums. Money that Elias and I saved over decades of hard work, penny by penny, was financing our son's façade of a successful life, all while he plotted our murder. The weight of it was crushing. Our labor, our dreams, had been meticulously plundered, not by strangers, but by the very child we cherished. The days following the arrests were a whirlwind of police interviews, legal consultations, and calls from a media frenzy that had picked up the story. Local news channels dubbed it the incendiary betrayal, and reporters from across the country clamored for our version of events. My sister, Evelyn, flew in immediately, her eyes wide with shock and unshed tears as she hugged me tight. "Emmy," she kept repeating, "I always felt something was off with Leo's grand pronouncements, but I never imagined this. Never this." Her validation, her belief, was a small comfort amidst the overwhelming devastation. Elias, though still recovering from his more extensive burns, was moved to a room next to mine. Our lawyer, Mr. Henderson, the same kind elderly man who had drafted our will, visited us daily with updates on the legal proceedings. "The case is ironclad," he assured us, his voice somber. "With the recordings, their confessions during the arrest, and all the financial evidence, it's virtually impossible for them to escape significant convictions." But then, he added a sobering detail. "However, their defense attorneys are trying to argue for a lesser plea, claiming it was a crime of passion, not premeditated. They're attempting to portray Leo as a desperate, financially ruined artist who snapped under pressure, manipulated by Sophia." "A crime of passion?" I scoffed, despite my injuries. "They planned this for weeks. They bought accelerants, they surveilled us, and they chose the perfect, secluded location. This was cold, calculated murder." Mr. Henderson nodded gravely. "I know, and we have the evidence to prove premeditation. But their lawyers will attempt to paint a different picture. Your testimony, Mrs. Smith, combined with Mr. Smith's recording, will be crucial for the jury to understand the true, horrifying nature of these crimes. The thought of facing Leo and Sophia in court, of reliving every agonizing detail, was terrifying. But it was what we had to do, for justice, for our own peace." 3 months after the fire, Elias and I were finally able to go home. Our injuries were healing, though Elias still bore the scars of the burns, and my leg, though mended, ached with a phantom pain. The cabin, however, was gone. A desolate, charred ruin stood where our sanctuary once was, a stark monument to betrayal. We had to move into a temporary apartment in the city, far from the familiar scent of pine and lake water. It felt strange, alien. Our lives had been irrevocably altered. "Do you think we'll ever truly feel safe again, Elias?" I asked him one night, as we lay in our unfamiliar bed, the silence heavy between us. He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "I don't know, Emmy," he confessed, his voice weary. "But we're alive. We have the truth on our side, and for the first time in years, we don't have to live with secrets." The trial began 7 months later. On the day I had to testify, I looked Leo directly in the eyes for the first time since the fire. There was no remorse, no flicker of the sensitive artist I thought I knew. I saw a hollow, calculating stranger, devoid of all warmth. When I finished my testimony, after recounting every horrifying detail of our ordeal, I addressed him directly from the witness stand. "Leo, I don't know who you are anymore. The son I raised, the artist I loved, he died that night. What stands before me is a monster, one I unknowingly helped to create." Sophia, beside him, merely looked away, her face pale, her mask finally shattered. The jury deliberated for 5 days. Elias and I waited, hand in hand, each minute stretching into an eternity. Finally, the verdict came down. Guilty. Leo Smith and Sophia Smith were both found guilty of first-degree attempted murder, aggravated arson, and multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, 2 years later, Elias and I are rebuilding. Not a new cabin, not yet, but our lives. We've established a foundation in Richard's name, dedicated to supporting young artists from underprivileged backgrounds, ensuring their talent finds honest avenues. We volunteer, we travel, we rediscover the simple joys we almost lost. The scars remain, physical and emotional, but they are fading, slowly, testament to our resilience. The fire may have consumed our home and shattered our illusions, but it couldn't extinguish our spirit. It forced us to confront the darkest corners of human nature, but also illuminated the unwavering strength of our bond, Elias and I. We survived. We exposed the truth. And though the pain of betrayal will always be a part of our story, we choose to live not in the shadows of the past, but in the enduring light of truth and a future we reclaimed. If you found this story compelling, shocking, or even just thought-provoking, please show your support. Don't forget to like this video, comment below with your thoughts. We want to hear them. And subscribe to our channel for more true stories that uncover the unsettling realities beneath the surface of everyday life. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next upload.